All right. Welcome back to the Games Den podcast. You are joined by your hosts, Atty. That's me.
I'm Evan.
I'm Shashank.
And today we also have a special guest. Want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Zoe.
That intro will never get more awkward.
Yeah.
I hope not.
But also, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about world building in today's episode. Before we get into all of that, Shashank, what happened to the clickbaity titles, man? What happened to the clickbait?
Okay.
Where'd it go?
That didn't make it into... I started recording just after you said clickbait titles. So, sorry, didn't make it into the last episode.
Don't do clickbait.
That's garbage, man.
Don't sell your soul.
But it's so fun.
Hey, listen, it's just an experiment. It's an experiment.
Look, I'm just the technician. My producer, Atty, is telling me we need more clickbait.
It's a shame.
This is an executive order.
Yep.
This is executive order 69. We need more clickbait in our video titles and thumbnails.
For shame. For shame.
Oh god. For shame. But yeah, today's episode, before we begin, let me, for those of you who don't know what the Games Den is, we are the game development group at the University of Alberta. We make, talk, and play games. We often host game jams, work on side projects for fun. We talk about games all the time on our Discord server, which you can check out at thegamesden.ca. Feel free to join the conversation. We're having exciting conversations about Games Done Quick, which is happening right now. Also, of course, talking about D&D as per the usual has been the trend for the last 2-3 months. But yeah, we're also having exciting conversations about upcoming games, which we're going to discuss on the podcast today too. So without further ado, what are you guys playing right now?
I'll go first because, Evan, what have you done to me?
The best thing I ever could, my dude.
Sure is.
My end goal with this club.
So I've been playing Hades recently, which is, it's not out yet, but it's in early access. It's a roguelike, just procedurally generated game by Supergiant. It is far too addicting. Evan showed me this game way back when we used to meet in person, and
when that was a thing, yeah.
That was a thing.
Before times.
Yeah.
I played and beat the game in 2 or 3 days. Yeah, so it's taking up all of my time.
I guess I'm just
Still
bad
playing
because I
it?
still haven't finished the game. I still haven't finished the game yet.
You gotta get good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
But you're still coming back to it after beating it?
Oh yeah, there's a lot to unlock, and just even if you're just playing the game, the gameplay loop itself is insanely addicting.
Yep.
So, highly recommend it.
Yeah, I have
Yeah, I mean, I
something
think
like
the
200
way
hours in that
it
game.
fuses. 200 hours? Damn, bro.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
a lot.
I'm still finding new content.
Yeah.
I'm still finding new voice lines and all of that. It's
Oh
ridiculous.
yeah, I keep playing through the same things over and over
Totally.
again, and I'm like, I know, come on, new voice line, I need to hear it.
Yeah.
That's the breadcrumb
I got
trail
a
that the game is
line for
leaving for
everything.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
No, that's great. Hades is a fantastic game. I always enjoyed the action RPG elements of it and the way it tackled boons and power-ups as a mechanism for progression and builds. But I also really enjoy the level designs that they have going on. within the themes of like the levels of hell that you kind of ascend. It's really, really cool. If you haven't checked out Hades already, check it out. They also announced recently on Twitter that they're going to be releasing on Switch.
Yeah.
What is early access? I don't know. It seems to be a full game that's releasing on Switch soon. Yeah, look forward to that and check it out. What else have you guys been playing?
Well, as a continuation from the previous podcast, I have not played any new games because I've been absolutely addicted to Risk of Rain 2. Still at this point.
Also a roguelite, right?
Yep, and it has actually just a few days after the last podcast released, it went out of early access and had its full release.
Ooh.
So now the game has a proper ending, new levels and all that, and it's been I've sunk too much time into it for the past week.
Yep.
I think something like 40 hours. So not great. But yeah, it's super replayable, and the new characters they've released are amazing.
Nice.
But yeah, that's been my life.
It's been a while since I've
go roguelike.
played a roguelite.
What was the last one you played, Zoe?
That's a good question. I think probably Faster Than Light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
It is. That's one I've never beaten.
Right.
Yeah. Which I don't know if that's sad or not, but I genuinely
I mean,
I can't judge.
I haven't been able to finish the last level of Hades so far, so I mean, I think you're fine. I think you're fine. Yeah, it's sort of trying again and again, which is what the roguelike loop is all about anyway. The roguelike loop is about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's really interesting that PCG games are popping up in conversation right now. It seems to be a lot of them. On the very opposite end of that spectrum, I have been playing Fall Guys, which I got as a PS Plus subscription perk, and I tried it out, and you know what? It's an indie game. Like you can really see that it's an indie game. It's tiny. It's compact. It's like it's just it's just such a self-contained experience.
I like indie games, but when you say it like that, it doesn't sound flattering.
Yeah.
No, I mean in comparison to the size, right? Because recently I've been playing PS4 games. And I've been playing all the AAA titles. Like I've been playing Ghost of Tsushima, right? And I just started playing Last of Us not a while back, and now I'm still playing that game. So I've been playing all these big titles, even Monster Hunter Iceborne. And then suddenly I kind of check out Fall Guys because there's so much hype about it on Twitter. And then it's such a small game in comparison, but it's totally blowing up, and everyone's kind of into it. It's all the hype and rage right now. And I was really curious to see like why Battle Royale isn't my genre. I'm not a huge fan of the Battle Royale genre. But I wanted to check this out because I wanted to see how an indie game of its size could gather such huge clout on Twitter and get a huge following in the matter of days after its release. And so obviously the Twitter account and the account manager has a lot to do with building the hype. But the design of the game as well is really elegant. Surprisingly elegant, actually, because all you do when you log into when you start the game is that you start off at the very first screen, which is the play screen. And how do you start playing the game? You press X to play. And then suddenly, just after pressing the game, you're already into the game. It's so easy.
Right.
There's like no barriers to entering a game of Fall Guys, and you can exit whenever you want, basically. And the challenges that it offers you are simple and easy to comprehend. The amount of actions you have are accessible. You can jump, you can crouch, go prone, I guess, and grab. 3 actions and movement. That's it. It's such a minimalist game in its design, but of course it has like the whole cosmetic store to kind of get the to hype up the customization element of your Fall Guys. So yeah, generally I'm fascinated how this kind of game has attracted people from all sorts of different demographic of game players, like people who play, you know, your CS:GO and your COD, and people who play like your RPGs, people who play indie games exclusively. Like everyone's kind of coming together around this game, and it has a huge pull right now. It's fascinating. If you guys ever want to kind of investigate the design of Fall Guys, I think it's there's some notes to be taken there. 100%. It does a lot of things good. Not for me, but it does a lot of things good.
Yeah, I mean that was
I'm just
episode, right? Last episode
Sorry?
we were talking about like the whole smaller games might be the way forward.
Yeah.
Yep.
What a coincidence that Fall Guys literally becomes a giant hit after the podcast releases. I'm telling you, we're all prophets here. Y'all don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of going from one size of game to another, I've been playing the Outer Worlds lately, and I'm assuming like having Obsidian separate from Bethesda had an effect on how it was developed, because there's a lot of times where I'm surprised at how little content there is, or at like a big feature that's missing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because I have said before that I would prefer games like Fallout and Skyrim to be a bit smaller if it was a bit more well written and a bit more care was given to what's there. But now playing Outer Worlds, I'm not sure if I can put my money where my mouth is with that.
Right.
It's it's missing stuff like you can't romance companions. The worlds don't feel quite as open, even though it's open world. They feel a bit more like you're on a path.
Mm-hmm.
There's fewer companions, I think. Like, I found them all. You keep them on your ship, and then you can swap them out. It's a fun collecting game. And you have like 6 rooms, and I thought there would be like a dozen companions, and you could only have so many on your ship, but I'm pretty sure you can actually have every companion on your ship. So I'm surprised at a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's definitely not an indie game, but
that's interesting.
Actually, no. Does that qualify?
I think its budget is more than that of a regular indie game. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Obsidian has made some big
part
hits.
Of the definition?
So. Yeah, it is. Actually, I think that's the only definition, really. No, budget and people, I think, are the 2 qualities as we discussed last time. It's on the Wikipedia page.
What does means independent? Really?
It's indie and AAA and all these other definitions, they all come from budget and people size of studio. But which is interesting, right? Because like Obsidian has definitely like over 100 people working for them. So are they indie? I guess they're like in the middle somewhere. But it's interesting to me that they talked about how you prefer games that are smaller, and then Outer Worlds kind of told you differently. What particularly in your experience was it that made you like kind of recalculate that feeling?
I don't know. I think just the stuff I listed. Feeling like I consumed all the content, and I guess maybe it's the fact that when you hit that wall of like, oh, there's no more companions for me to find, I found them all. That is like as immersion breaking as it is for there to be more companions, but maybe they're like not as well written, or they don't have so many interactions with each other. Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I think there is an extra layer of polish given to if you have two companions doing a quest together. Like, go ahead.
Okay, I see. No, that's really interesting because I think I had a similar experience with Octopath Traveler too. Because Octopath Traveler is developed by Square Enix, but I think they had a smaller team working on it. And And in the game, obviously, it's beautiful. It's made on Unreal Engine 4 and whatever. But like, there's an element where you don't see your companions interacting, even though there are 8 of you, and you don't see each other. You don't see everyone interacting with each other, right? And it's slightly jarring when you see that. And it reminds you that you kind of wish that it was going to be like a bigger JRPG experience than what it actually was. Even though I did sink like over 100 hours into that, there are elements, those key mechanics that you feel like are missing from a differentiate from a AAA title generally. So I feel like I've had a similar experience. But you've also been playing other indie games, right? You've been playing Hollow Knight. I remember you were on stream the other time.
Yeah, I've played a lot of Hollow Knight in the past week or two. I think I'm at like 100 and some completion because it goes over 100 apparently.
Yeah,
that's a beautiful game. I was very disappointed when I got the achievement for unlocking all the maps for every area in the world, because I was like, oh, there's no more new areas for me to go to anymore.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very well-made game.
I think what's fascinating about that is that Team Cherry is again, we talked about this before in the podcast, I think, too. Team Cherry is a relatively small team of people. And Hollow Knight is a very expansive game. And I'm really impressed with the quality of work and the quantity of work as well that they put into Hollow Knight for an indie team of their size. So I'm always tempted to reconsider like the definitions that of game quality that you see from indie developers versus from AAA developers, because I feel like that barrier is thinning every single day with games of higher quality and higher quantity and content wise, obviously, that are releasing on a daily basis. And I guess that kind of links back into some of the new games that have been releasing in or have caught our radars, I guess, in recent history. So before we got cut off by technical difficulties, talking about Spiritfarer, which is a new indie game that is released on Switch and PC. And I was discussing kind of how awesome it is to finally see a game about a cute game. Cute is a little bit of I call it cute. It's a good adjective. It's a really cute game, platformer that is about sending spirits to their afterlife, if I recall correctly and if I understand correctly. And every single time I see like trailers of it, I'm always like, my heart is not ready for this experience. Yeah. I mean, I'm super hyped for Spiritfarer as one of the games coming up. What games are you looking forward to now that some of the announcements have been made?
Part of me wants to really get into the new Microsoft Flight Sim, because I've heard good things about it. But it feels like one of those games where I'd be really interested in playing it, and then I'd like reach a point where, oh, this is actually very difficult. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And the way they have it set up, it's very difficult to get Steam refunds for it, because the download takes place outside of Steam. So you spend 4 hours downloading, then you can't get a refund.
Right.
Interesting.
Yikes.
Yeah. But that's something I might be looking more into. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I played Flight Simulator X when that released back for Windows XP. Yeah, it was a while ago, and my friend had it there on his computer because he was a plane nerd. And so I spent a lot of time trying to get Cessnas to like land on the ocean and then fly back up again, and it's just fun like moving around with random like planes of all different sorts and kinds. And I never got too much into the technical aspect of flight simulation. I was just more excited about controlling a plane in the skies, and making that go fly around. It's the same reason I kind of enjoyed. Remember that they had like in Wii Sports Resort, there was like a mini game where you just control a plane, then just fly around the island, and then just find collectibles around the island, and that was the entire game. Yeah. I love that shit. I poured hours in that shit. I found every single collectible to be found in that mini game. Something
Wow.
about just flying around, man. It's freeing. It's flow inducing for me.
Yeah, no, I totally get you.
Yeah.
I can see the appeal of Flight Simulator. It's
I think it's a very primal desire to want to go in the sky and see things like you're a bird who can just fly anywheres, you know?
Yeah.
It's funny about that. A lot of people would disagree and say that flying is for birds, walking is for humans. I recently watched a Jacksepticeye video where he actually talked about that too. He's like, I can't understand all you people who want to actually get up into the air because, fear of heights is a thing, and
But if you can fly, then you're good. You know?
It's like
Yeah.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The knack to flying is falling and then forgetting to hit the ground.
Man, that's like deep, but also it's not.
Yep.
I don't think it's deep. I think it's just British wit.
Yeah.
It sounds deep at
Yeah.
first, but then when you think about it, it's like, no, it's very basic.
Yeah.
Like, there's
Yeah,
one layer.
Super
Yeah.
deadpan. Jeez. One thing that I was really excited for that I found out about is Ghost of Tsushima Sucker Punch just dropped that it's going to be having multiplayer in September, which you have no idea how hyped I am for that because this game's combat is fucking sick. And so, like, Ghost of Tsushima multiplayer combat is going to be even better, and I'm actually really, really excited for that. So I'm really looking forward to the co-op multiplayer that they have going on in Ghost of Tsushima. That's a cool announcement that they made. Have you guys heard about the Goose Game multiplayer reveal too?
Oh, yeah.
That seems like it's gonna be fun, to say the least.
Just imagine
Yeah, no.
being a jerk to all the village people, but with a friend.
But now you can tag team them.
Oh no.
Yeah, life's about to get a lot worse for that villain.
Yeah.
Good thing they're not real, or are they?
Oh dear.
What makes someone real?
Oh dear, no, this is too out of scope for this podcast. We can't handle this.
No, we
Have you ever heard of general artificial intelligence, guys? I want you to know the
So we
developers of
kinda-
Goose Game have got it down.
That'd be disturbing.
Yeah.
That would be
We've
disturbing.
made a highly specialized AI that is capable of learning and having human emotion and all that. We've used it to make them a quaint little village that you can torment as a goose. Enjoy.
That's a good use.
That's almost in the spirit of Goose Game, actually.
It is though. It really is.
It kind
though.
of is.
Oh dear.
That's the funny thing about it, right? It's like Goose Game is all about like being a fucking idiot goose who's like ruining people's lives.
You really are a horrible goose.
Yeah. But now it becomes morally ambiguous because you're actually like destroying the lives of general artificial intelligences. Oh no. Goose Game, what have you done? Slow down, man.
Let's
ahead of the
move
curve.
on.
Speaking of moral dilemmas,
dear.
Which
I don't
one
know
are
if
we
you guys have
talking
heard,
about
but
first?
well, let's talk about Oculus.
Okay.
Because that shit's hit the fan, and I'm very passionate about the VR community, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
The podcast document is out of order. I thought we were moving on to the make section.
No,
yeah,
we're just
two big topics.
like I said, like when we invited you over to the podcast, we mentioned that like this is the most unstructured, structured podcast in existence, and
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
this is what we mean by that. We will sacrifice anything for the segues.
Yeah, this the Apple Epic War. Sorry, did we want to do Oculus first?
Oculus.
We do Oculus first. Yeah.
I'm gonna have
Okay,
to
never
bleep
mind.
that out because it's
Big
spoilers.
companies that I can't. It's literally it all has to do with yeah, it is spoilers. I apologize. It's all big companies, so it kind of stuck together in my head. Big companies who have like monopolies or
Yeah,
close to it.
we'll get to it.
Yeah.
We'll get to it.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's like I want to hear your thoughts on it first because I think I have very heated emotions about this particular issue.
About Oculus?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna. The first time I heard about it was on Oculus's subreddit, and the top comment was from the founder of Oculus, just being like, "I've been played."
Palmer Luckey?
Yeah, Palmer Luckey, because when he sold the company to Facebook, they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna guarantee that they won't need a Facebook account to log in," and then this happens, and people are blaming him because like he went on record and said like, yeah, no, in the future you're not going to need a Facebook account, because that's what he was told. That's what the agreement was.
Yeah.
Can he take this to court as a breachment of their agreement if there was in contract form?
It depends on whether or not it is in the contract. So
Yeah.
knowing Facebook, they probably didn't put it in the contract and it was just a verbal agreement.
Yeah, I mean, I
have no idea.
Yeah, I don't have any idea either. I think at that level, I think everything's contractual. It should be, at least, because that's how clever businesses play. But it might have subverted some kind of bylaw inside the contract itself, which kind of negates some issues. But at the by the way, total side tangent. Did you know Palmer Luckey is a weeb and he likes to order online?
Not surprised.
Yeah.
It kind of checks out with being founder of Oculus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just saw a random tweet. He's like, "Oh my god, Kirito's eyes are yellow," and I'm like, I'm so taken aback. But you know what? Like, he's living his life, man. I can't judge him because I'm also a sucker for bad isekais. But Oculus, back to topic. For me, it was really aggravating to hear about their Facebook integration and account policies, because of the fact that their developers and consumers alike signed onto the Oculus platform because of the account independence that they had with Oculus, right? And that was a big factor. And I think it's less of a big factor and more of a natural factor that should be there. For example, like with HTC, you had to have their HTC Vive account, and that's like kind of what you connect, and you can connect your Steam or whatever else from inside the platform. But like with Oculus, like if you're doing only Facebook, this is just Facebook making a play to get people back on the platform, because people have been leaving Facebook actively.
Yeah,
right?
I don't like using Facebook, which is
me neither.
Part of what's unpleasant about this is like I don't want to have to go through Facebook's whole setup. I don't think it's good. I don't think I'm benefiting for having to go through that.
Yeah.
This, I don't know if you remember, but years ago, YouTube, you started being required for a certain amount of time to have a Google Plus account.
Yeah.
This is that exact same thing,
Yeah.
and it's going to end up the exact same way. Like, people aren't going to just start using Google Plus. They're not going to just start using Facebook because of this.
Okay.
It's just a way to try to force people, and people don't like being forced, and it's bad for everybody.
Do you remember Bob from the YouTube comments back when they did the Google Plus stuff, and people kept posting this copy pasta that's just like, "This is Bob. He's going to war against Google Plus."
I think I actually do remember that, which is unfortunate.
Just a little dude in the tank, yeah.
Now we're gonna get VR Bob.
I think so.
VR Bob.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh, it's gonna be 3D.
He's gonna be 3D. Yeah. Copy pasta. It's an actual skit that plays out, and you can copy paste it. Oh no. If only that was reality. You go to any kind of VR chat or virtual space, and you just see copy pasta Bob everywhere.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's like Ugandan Knuckles, but Bob version. Yeah. It's so here's what really frustrates me about this entire issue is that the VR AR space as an emerging technology is still in its baby stages, and it's very delicate. And VR particularly, AR is more adoptable for larger markets. VR is less adoptable for multiple reasons. Obviously, one being the hardware limitations. But here's the thing: since VR is still in its early stages, this makes for a really rough time because, like, right now VR's goal as an industry should be to onboard more people onto their platforms, right? It's less of the exclusivity to gamers and more of like a utilitarian purpose for other businesses and software companies and use cases, which it has been used for in a lot of research labs across the world. But with Facebook going on and being like, you need to add your Facebook account, that's only you can access your Oculus stuff, is like, there are people who've deleted their Facebook accounts for over 5 years now. And now you're forcing them to make a Facebook account again to log in. You already have Instagram as a big kind of social platform to your advantage that you already own. You have WhatsApp, right? Facebook on WhatsApp. And now you just want them to hop on to Facebook to regain customer base and I guess user base. I'm not sure what the motive necessarily are. I'm not going to assume that I know. But like, it's damaging for the VR industry right now because it's in a very delicate spot where a few bad moves can cause the entire industry to crash if there isn't enough backing from the community to push it back up again. Which is a really worst case scenario kind of vision that I'm seeing, at least. And the Quest is a great platform. The Oculus Quest is amazing. Like, it's the first accessible VR headset that's like really proper VR and accessible, right? You don't need any of those extra. It has inside-out tracking. It's fucking great. And it's cheaper than the regular headsets. It costs the price of a console. So for me, like, with the Quest releasing and becoming such a great onboarder platform for people into VR, and this happening just a couple of years after its release is ridiculous. Because now there are people, I've already gone to my social circles on various different platforms on Twitter or Instagram, whatever else. People are like, who wants to buy my Oculus? If you go to Kijiji right now, you're going to see multiple Quests and Oculus Rifts on sale on Kijiji right now.
Yep.
It's whack. Like, it just suddenly happened, like an outburst of it, right? And people are giving away their Quests. And people are, obviously, this is great for Oculus's competitors.
Yeah.
So this is great for HTC Vive. This is great for Index, right? And for HP's whatever software, however they have. But this is a terrible blow for the Oculus Quest, which is a great platform.
Yeah. In general.
I will say, I would not personally be confident saying that this move would have a huge impact on people wanting to buy it. Like, I know people on Twitter are loud and stuff, but I have a Facebook account. If I'm just pressing a button so you can let me use my nice shiny VR headset, like, I would do it.
Yeah.
So
And I think that comes back to... Sorry to interrupt, go on.
Like, okay, we mentioned the comparison between YouTube and Google+. It didn't really help Google+, but did it have a negative impact on YouTube? Like, I think you would have to... I don't know, I would want to refer to other examples because I don't personally feel like I can judge what the effect would be.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think for me, I don't think it's gonna negatively impact to that large a scale. I think the worst case scenario is that it does negatively impact on a scale that it just ramps up and becomes like a huge outburst, and then everyone just drops their VR Quests, right? Because the Quest is really important for mobile VR. It's the first platform to really be tetherless, which is a big deal. And it's one of the I know there are a lot of videos discussing this, but VR is going in two directions, right? You have the extremists, that's a rough word to use, more like enthusiasts who are buying like the Valve Index that's like high fidelity VR. And you have people buying the Quest, which is affordable, mobile, and tetherless and usable, right? So those are two kind of directions that VR is going in.
Accessible.
Accessible. Relatively. With the Quest like being one of those directions and being the founder of one of those directions, it's kind of rough for me to visualize an environment where only the enthusiasts market is being catered to. Everyone moves from this market to this market, and this market dies. You know what I mean? That's what I don't want. I don't want the mobile VR market to die off because I think it's really, really important for adoption.
Yeah, and I will say, it feels bad. This feels like it sucks.
it feels like it sucks.
And I hope it
Um,
doesn't, yeah, as you said, ruin that market.
But I think you have a great point about like, will this really like be a huge thing and start making a big deal out of it? Yeah, I think so. I also agree with you. I think that this could
Well-
be just a inflated issue.
But I also think, in a world where it doesn't have a huge impact, it still sucks if people are now connecting all their Facebook accounts. I mean, I read an article or two and they mentioned, like, Facebook's going to be getting data from your VR headset now,
Yeah.
too. They're going to be using that to target you with ads. It's going to be something else Facebook has control over, and, like, I don't like that in general.
Yeah.
As I was saying with my awful segue about getting all the big companies and their awful monopolies and what they have control over, like, all getting mixed up. Same with Facebook. Like, I just don't like them having more control over stuff
Mhm.
like this.
Yeah.
And just like how bad of a choice it is, it's like you give Facebook this account or you lose everything that you got on your Oculus. It's like you have your games, you have your progress on the said games, and that will, in the next 2 years, that will just be gone because you don't want to give Facebook your information.
Yep.
And so it's all just kind of skeevy.
It sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
suck.
Yeah.
I think that's the main reason people are so up in arms about it is because of data privacy. That's the real cause of this uproar,
Mhm.
is the privacy issue.
Yeah, I mean, that's why people dislike Facebook for the most part. I mean, you can say things about Facebook being toxic and all that, but really, like, the data privacy has been a lot of it recently, and why people want to move away from the platform, and they're just trying to push the platform onto more people.
Yeah, small side
personally.
note, I didn't actually realize that Facebook owned Instagram, so now I feel a little grosser about Instagram being my main social media.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else do they own?
Ridiculous.
I'm sure it'll be.
Yeah,
Who owns
what's that?
Snapchat? Who owns Snapchat? Was Facebook the only
No,
Snapchat? Or was that? I
it's-
think they were in talks with Google or something.
Yeah, someone bought it recently, right? Or
Uh,
recently.
I think they were in talks with Google. I don't know if it went anywhere. I think they might still be independent.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
They've
Um,
got some sketchy data privacy stuff too.
Yep.
Everyone should just
Man, Snapchat. Wow.
Everyone should just
Sorry, go
switch
on.
over to Signal. It's so much better than everything else.
Man. I never even heard of this platform before.
No? Well, it's not really a platform. It's basically non-Facebook WhatsApp. Cuz like
Which is?
it's an app called Signal.
Oh yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, the encryption standard that WhatsApp and like Microsoft, Google, they all use this encryption standard that was pioneered by Signal, which I found really
Oh.
neat.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. That's awesome. I think I might check it out actually.
Yeah.
Only issue, of course, is that no one else uses it, so it's like rough to.
That's why I
on
plug
board
it
on the
every
platform.
single time I talk about this
Yeah,
stuff.
at least
Yeah.
at least you have a
This is-
social group that's a bit more tech inclined.
Yeah.
I think, anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to segue? Do we want to talk about the other big scary monopoly conversation?
Oh, let's
Yeah,
get
sure, we
into
can-
that.
You do that.
Oh dear, this is a sad episode.
Yeah, so what I was gonna say before is this the issue with Apple and Google and Epic is how I learned that Epic develops Unreal Engine. Becoming conscientious of all these awful company, ownerships. So I'm realizing that Epic having beef with these other platforms isn't just an issue for Fortnite, it's an issue for
Yeah.
anyone developing games with Unreal. So that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe that Apple actually blocked off Unreal Engine's dev tools. Like that's
Or they're
crazy.
threatened to. Right? I don't think yet.
Threatened to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like a deadline that they put in place, but
Or-
we haven't reached
right.
it yet.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I think Epic is currently looking to court to try to stop that from happening, but it's going to be rough if if Epic loses their developer license for iOS platforms, there's not going to be any Unreal Engine 4 on any iOS device, which means that you can't even export to iOS through Unreal Engine if you are building a mobile game, for example, for iPad or iPhone, or whatever else it is.
Mhm.
This is really interesting, right? Because this is great for Unity on one end, but also I have mixed feelings about this entire situation, because I think, they're fighting against the 30% that Apple steals revenue. Steals it's a part of their policy.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're fighting against the policy, right? But then you also have like the whole Epic mobilizing an angry gamer fan base in Fortnite as basically like using propaganda. It's effectively propaganda inside of the game itself to kind of get people to rile up against Apple with the hashtag free Fortnite tag.
Yeah, that whole video made me really uncomfortable. There's a video parodying an old Apple commercial that basically just frames Apple as these evil overlords, and Epic as triumphantly standing in defiance of them. And I'm inclined to agree that it sounds nice to challenge a monopoly and have that kind of have a strike on the platform, but I'm also just uncomfortable for any company to try to pander on that level on that emotional level.
Yeah.
Don't appeal to my emotions, right? I want good arguments, and I want to know that this isn't just, Epic trying to vie for their own monopoly, which capitalism's broken. So
yeah.
But
if we're talking about
we're gonna end the episode there.
Yeah. If we're talking about like mobilizing bases to attack the other side, Apple is doing the same thing with this Unreal Engine license, because now Epic is getting a lot of pressure from game devs to, you got to give in because we need to develop for iOS.
Yeah.
So
I think there's
different bases, but they're still pushing against each other.
Yeah, but I do feel like Apple's it feels a lot more political, whereas Fortnite's feels, again, weirdly emotional and propaganda-ish.
Yeah.
I mean,
I will say,
Apple's targeting people's wallets with it, which is something I personally dislike.
Yeah, Apple and Google are genuinely flexing their control, right? Fortnite, that's one of the things I find like disturbing is Fortnite is the app that broke this rule. So it makes punish Fortnite for breaking your agreement. The fact that they're then going around and punishing, again, Unreal Engine in this huge, like, stroke of control and flexing what they have control over, that's scary.
Yes, and I've seen a lot of comments online about this as well, and multiple threads. But what's interesting to me about this is that Epic was ready for this.
Yeah.
Right? Epic had prepared that video way in advance.
Yeah.
Right? They knew what was coming, and this is a very planned attack. Like, they knew what was going to be at stake, and they knew what they could be threatened with, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they continue to go forward. Now I'm concerned, because like Epic isn't just making a move out of sheer like anger or like manipulation or whatever, right? This is really planned. And so I'm really interested to see which way this goes, because Epic isn't as big as a company as Apple and Google are, right? They're nowhere close. They still are corporate giants, of course, but like, I mean, in relative comparison. So they're also playing the underdog card, where they're like, we are the underdogs, corporate underdogs. Please vote for us. And so it's like, I'm really interested to know, and I think this will reveal itself over time, maybe. But I'm really curious to know why they chose to go after Apple and Google with this.
Yeah.
And why do they choose to file those lawsuits?
If we ever comprehend what company like this what their actual motivations are.
No, these corporate giants play at a very different level. They play at a very different political level. Like, it's hard to understand the magnitude of decisions going on in the backseat. And I'm not going to pretend to understand them. It's beyond my pay grade. But like, that is I'd be interested to know the result of this conflict whenever it does end. And I'm keeping my eyes on it. I obviously think there are more important things to be fighting against, such as the issues behind ethics in games, and everything else that kind of follows between predatory systems. But like, it's a conversation to be had, right? And I think that it's important to recognize that even though there are corporate giants going at war with each other effectively, there are more important things at hand to be tackled and to be introduced.
Speaking of corporate giants, it actually genuinely feels like those scenes in like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings where there are giants, like there's a storm happening and the giants come out to like throw rocks at each other, and all like the party, the Fellowship of the Ring are like, oh shit, can you not? Because they're little tiny dudes while the giants are throwing huge. Yeah.
This is the meme. This is actually the meme format.
Like that.
Yeah.
Should be.
It's like a Godzilla movie versus King Kong, and you're like, the kaijus are fighting and you're just hiding there in the buildings running away.
Yeah. Yeah, my god, man, I have work tomorrow. This sucks.
It sucks. I'm more worried about the collateral. Sorry, go ahead, Shashank.
I know I've seen this infographic where like it shows all the different distribution platforms for video games, and almost all of them take 30%.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I remember, oh god, time has no meaning. I think like a year and a half ago maybe, Spotify got into a spat with Apple about how them taking 30% and also pushing their own Apple Music was anti-competitive. So
yeah.
And
Spotify is backing up Epic right now, and publicly backing up Epic right now.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Spotify CEO came out and he's like, "Yo, let's go, Tim Sweeney."
Crossover you never thought you'd see.
Yeah.
Man, Fortnite's all about those interesting crossovers, right? But
it's all so ridiculous.
Oh
man.
I can't believe I'm saying these words, man. Like, it's so disorienting.
You made us do a clickbait episode, and now the episode is just cursed. That's it.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to acknowledge is apparently Epic tried to get a restraining order, or is trying to get a restraining order against Apple. I didn't know companies could do that to companies. I thought that was like a human person thing, not...
How do you... Like, the buildings
I
can't
don't know.
Go near each other?
It's
no,
more
like,
like,
I don't think it's a physical thing. I think it's like
I don't think it's physical.
They can't mess with Epic for like a period of time or something.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Because they know, because Epic knows that if Apple, like, if this ceasefire does happen in between, Apple's coming for an event at some point. Like, it's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna make their own commercial.
Yeah, and then suddenly Fortnite's gonna be like, oh, it's such a fucking bold move, but it's so unnecessary. Yeah. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm torn. I'm really torn.
Yeah.
So
Anyways, this we are living in a dystopian future. We're living in an interesting world. And speaking of worlds that we live in and play in,
Good segue. Keep it up. Let's keep this going. Let's go.
Why do I do this show?
Today's make section is about world building.
Let's try not to build a dystopian world, guys.
So, talking about world building in the video games that we play and in the tabletop games that we play, and the board games that we play. Out of curiosity, guys, what are your thoughts on and your opinions on world building and how you kind of go about it in your process when you're developing games and thinking about games?
I watched Bill Wurtz's History of the World.
Yeah.
And that genuinely informed my world building.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so for the first, 1,000 years or whatever, my dates are going to be wrong, because I don't retain that information very well. But anyways, for the first, 1,000 or 2,000 years, it's just kind of agricultural societies, probably developing, I don't know, technology, making connections, whatever. Then, at some point you get metals and stuff, but it's also not very linear. Different places have metals, and they have different tiers of metals and all of that. And anyways, I took notes and then I kind of tried to parallel my world history to that.
Nice.
That's really interesting. So you took actual world history context and you based your fictional world. You're talking about presumably your D&D campaign.
Yes.
Yeah, and you use that knowledge of how our world progressed through history to serve as a base for your own world building.
Yeah, I know George R. R. Martin based a lot of Game of Thrones on the War of the Roses,
Yeah.
So I think a good piece of advice is, don't be too scared to just literally rip history off. Just literally copy it. A lot of people won't know the history, so they won't even be able to tell that you're yoinking it, and, I mean, change it up as you see fit. But
Plus, people will be like, whoa, that's really neat how it parallels actual history. Yep.
Yeah. Then it's just a fun fact.
Yeah.
I wonder why. What worlds have you guys been building and how have you been going about it? What's the process? What games do you enjoy the worlds of? And because I feel like it's such a broad topic, right? There's so much to discuss in terms of the kinds of worlds, the genres of worlds, the backgrounds and how they're built, what's enforcing them.
Yeah, I'm curious about what worlds everyone is building. I know mine was a fantasy world for Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
I will say, this past weekend I got to kind of run an interesting experiment with world building, where I had my players play in their same D&D world just 200 years in the past, and they got to they essentially informed a lot of what I'm going to be incorporating from the future, and they are defining the world as they go, which I think is really interesting. I think it'll make it more engaging when they see a character that they've played as and that they created, that it's not just someone they've met, that it's actually someone they value. Omer created a character that he kind of fell in love with, and he's disappointed that he's not going to play them again, but he has created a character that I will now be able to pull out at some point and do something with, and he'll be a lot more attached to the character because of that.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, high fantasy question I have to ask.
Yep.
Is this a character who has been alive for those 200 years?
It's an elf, so yeah.
Okay. Elves in world building and anyone who lives hundreds of years is so weird.
Yeah, it makes it really weird to think about, and it's
It is.
Yeah, it's.
I always try to come to
complicated.
terms with the fact that there are races that live beyond the regular human lifespan, or even less, right? And then you're like, wait, how does that work? I know a lot of this is informed by the high fantasy tropes that we all know and love from Lord of the Rings or whatever else that came before it. But the concept of these creatures living many years outside of the realm of human lifespan, regular human lifespan, is extremely interesting. The concept of having characters that can live over 200 years is interesting, because how much have they seen? What is it like to live that long? What have you gone through? How do you mature? What kind of thoughts do you have?
I had a war, and I was maybe it happened 100 or 200 years ago or whatever. And then one of my players said, "Oh, my mentor lived 710 years." So I'm like, okay, I guess this war was just kind of a little blit in their lifespan. They didn't even they probably didn't blink when it happened.
Yeah, it's like this COVID
Um,
situation for us. Like it's a once in a lifetime thing. Even though the recession happened not long ago, it's like it's the same issue, right? Like this COVID-19 recession is happening, and it's like a big thing for us right now. Like, and it'll have lasting impact, obviously. World War
And
II
also
happened.
just like meditate.
Yeah.
Just meditate through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. For them, it's like, oh yeah, that happened once in my lifetime. I remember that. You know.
Also, by the way, I think it's really cool to develop your history around player choices as well. That's a really fun way to do it, probably.
Yeah.
I love that
Definitely
emergence
do more.
actually that you mentioned. Like using your own players to actually create emergent history.
Yeah.
Is a great idea. Fantastic
also-
idea.
It's a really easy way to give exposition without just throwing lore at your players. Because
Mm.
what the one shot I put them through is tangentially related to a quest they're on right now.
No spoilers. I'm a player.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil anything. But when they
Oh.
come to certain things, they are going to be more aware of it than their characters are, and they're going to be able to think about it a bit more and hopefully appreciate it a bit more. So it's a very efficient way to give exposition, I found.
I've just put 2 and
Good
2
way to
together,
make-
by the way.
You'll see what happens.
Good way to make your players care about your history.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just make them part of it.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't. Sorry, Shashank, go ahead. You have something to say?
No, I was just saying that's fair.
I think the interesting thing about being a person who is in charge of world building and lore and other things that tangential related narrative perspective is that obviously you have your influences, right? A lot of games that we have experienced have their influences, right? Skyrim is based in D&D and ever since the Elder Scrolls came out, right? And that's very like high fantasy kind of basis that is rooted in fiction from the past. Games like Ghost of Tsushima, for example, are historical fantasies which are based in real life events in the past, but are playing with history, as you mentioned, say academically. So it's different worlds, different contexts. But when you're building your world, I think that there are a few pillars, right? You gotta have in place. So before I delve deeper into this, I want to ask all of you this question of like, what are your pillars of world building? Like, what are the things your world must have, and how deep do you go into it when you're building your world?
Huh.
Actually, before everyone answers that, can I ask, like, Evan's building a high fantasy world, I'm building a high fantasy world. Shashank, what kind of worlds have you built, or are you building?
So with my D&D campaign that I'm running right now, it's modern day. But, and I'm gonna say this because I don't think any of my players actually listen to this podcast. I've recently made the choice to include high fantasy elements in the distant past of the world. So
Okay.
magic used to exist and then it just got forgotten. And now there's some like people in the world that the players meet that are trying to bring it back and are trying to like learn all the ancient secrets and stuff.
It's like Assassin's Creed.
Kind of, yeah.
Cool.
And just like, because when we talk about high fantasy, it comes with all the tropes, right? We know
Yeah.
what to expect because it's happened in so many different forms of media. So
It's worth acknowledging, too, I'm trying not to use it synonymously with, like, European high fantasy, but in many ways that is a big part of it. But I think it's important to acknowledge how much of that is part of the tropes. But anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
but like that is a fair point for my world as well, because it is a very multicultural world. Different parts of the continent are inspired by different parts of our world. So having differences in the ancient past could be very fun things to play with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the thing I really want to try and capture is, in the world, no one knows any of these tropes. No one knows what to expect. And because it's all ancient history to them, they'll be uncovering it. Imagine if, like, the Egyptians actually were magic. Like, they used magic in ancient Egypt and built the pyramids to channel magic or something. That sort of stuff.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I get to play with that a lot, which I like.
But it's really cool, right? Because you have like the historical background and the history of the world to look back upon and then influence with your fantasy elements and infuse that, right?
Yeah.
So coming back to the question that I wanted to answer your question, Zoe, I'm currently working with two European fantasy worlds that one of them is less so, and also on the side I'm working on a less traditional fantasy and more informed fantasy based off of different cultures and aspects of the world and how it could have happened. Because like I often found myself finally, after making two complete worlds, I finally started to think a little bit more about, with that experience, started to think about more of on a deeper level about like the history of the actual world and its formation, and like how factors like distance, factors like oceans in between continents, like what are continents, like what a planet is, like all these other different like wild, really broad stroke concepts are informing long-lasting decisions in the future, because you're basically simulating like the past all the way up to the day that your players are engaging in your world. So I'm currently working on 3 different kinds of worlds simultaneously, but I actually still wanted to ask you guys the question though, like what are your pillars of world building, and what do you find is most important for your process?
I kind of want to hop on what you're saying about like, oh, how does distance factor in, how do the oceans factor in, and all that. So I think a good pillar to think of is story. Is to always consider like, what does a certain element of the landscape, what story does it tell? Like, how does it interact with other elements? Because you can start with one random thing just to get ideas flowing, but that'll immediately inform a bunch of other things. Like, well, I have a mountain range, that's cool. Okay, well, there's going to be a lot of rivers flowing out of that mountain range, and then if you have rivers flowing out of that mountain range, there's going to be a lot of civilization along those rivers, because that's where cities tend to be. Mm-hmm. So I think like those relationships is a very important pillar for me.
Right.
Yeah. It's like Civ 6 simulation.
Sure.
Yeah. Actually, it's a pretty good framework. If you guys are ever building worlds, just play Civ 6. And you'll automatically like see, because they have all these parameters written down, right? They're like, if you settle down next... Listen, I grew up in the British system. And so when you're settling next to a river, for example, you get like a +2 bonus of production because you're next to a river and you can grow crops better, and that informs a huge bunch of things. When you're next to a mountain, you have a defense bonus. Yeah.
Even like Minecraft has some degree of logic built into its world generation. Even it has wet areas are more likely to be next to wet areas, like ocean, swamp. Jungle, I think, is like humid, and then hot areas are more likely to be next to hot areas, so jungle, desert, whatever. So yeah, you can kind of look to how video games generate land for ideas.
Yep.
I do want to point out though that if I do want to do world building, and if I pick up Civ 6, I'm not going to be doing world building. I'm just going to be playing Civ 6.
Yeah.
Yo, make a throwaway game and just spend some time assessing the logic of the game. I know it's a joke, but like I'm actually serious about this for like, yeah, like it's a cool way to look at the influencing factors of a generated world.
If someone else has already done the work of thinking about this, so
yeah. For me, like my rule when I'm making a place is I always start with the geography, and I don't logic comes second. I just want to make a place that looks cool, and I think I can tell a
That's
cool
valid.
story. And once I have that geography, I have that thing that's physical, I think about why it's there, so I go backwards and I start thinking about like creation myth and cosmology. And then once I got that done, then I start going forwards again and thinking, okay, what stories can be told with this geography, with this spirituality, and what are people thinking?
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
my process.
A level of realism is pretty important to me as a person. You could always throw it away and just be like, my world exists on the back of a giant turtle.
Yeah.
Which I believe is how Discworld works.
Yeah.
And you can always just
Yeah.
put anything wherever you want, as long as you have it. Like, if you have motivation to do that, then it'll be great.
Yeah. I think internal logic can be important, but I don't take a lot of inspiration from real
Yeah.
world because I think real world is limiting and we're not playing in the real world, we're playing in the fantasy world.
Yeah.
That's interesting. How about you, Shashank?
I don't. When I write, I'm more of like a playwright. So I don't tend to do geography first. I tend to do lore first, and then the lore informs the geography. So if two nations are fighting with each other, maybe they border each other, or maybe they're completely separate from each other, and they're vying for political favor with countries that do border the enemy. Maybe one nation is very powerful because they have sea on all sides of them, so they just beeline their navy, or they're heavily fortified by a mountain range.
Yeah, it's really great to focus on the civilizations as opposed to the landscape. It's interesting that we start with different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it helps that I'm doing a modern day, so like everything's already established, and I can work backwards from there.
Yep.
That's really helpful, actually. Yeah, you're right. Because, but it makes things interesting because now you have like total creative freedom about how the past is affected.
Yeah.
And the actual lore behind that. Yeah, it's really cool. You're right, Zoe. It's really interesting how everybody starts from a different place. Because I start with inspiration first. So for me, I'm looking to experiences that I've played previously, and I start thinking tangentially to those experiences to try and develop my world first. And oftentimes those are video games or novels or books that I've read, or even like history, world history, for example. A lot of how the world that you two are in, Evan and Zoe, is informed by, I don't know if you guys figured this out yet, but we're coming to the end of the campaign, so I might as well reveal it.
I was actually wondering.
Okay, yeah, it's inspired by Fire Island Three Houses and the world of Fodlan.
I never would have picked that up.
That's all right.
So
it's very heavily inspired by the themes of the game, and it's very heavily inspired by the overarching kind of lore of the game as well. So if you kind of look back and kind of read about the Fire Emblem Three Houses lore, you'll see a lot of like similarities from inspiration perspective. And then of course, once I have an inspiration, I can just start really digging deep. What my process has become now is that once I have that inspiration and once I know the themes are of the world, or the story I want to tell, because for me, world building is fine as like a concept that's important to the immersion, right? But for me, the world building always has a higher context to storytelling. The world building exists for storytelling, and so for me, that's the way I look at it. So for me, it's like, okay, once I have a world, I'm looking for inspiration because the inspiration has themes related to storytelling. Storytelling will inform the world, and so that's how I look at it from a broader perspective. And so when I'm building the world, I'm often looking at like the tangential relations that come from that inspiration, and then I build my world accordingly and dive deep.
Yeah, it's maybe not as high of a priority for me and my personal preferences, but I think it is very good advice to always remember, why are you building a world? What is it for?
Mm-hmm.
And follow that. I know I was given the advice in the Games Den server to start small with your stories. Always which is kind of how my campaign started, so I'll use that as the example. Like, it started just in a tavern. It started in a very small town surrounding that tavern. But it involved some nobles, so then I went and I, developed the town that these nobles are from. And then I personally kind of went off with, like, just filling out the world, because that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But it's important not to forget, like, I need to come back to where my players are and make sure I'm facilitating their story.
Yeah. Totally. And I feel like that's something that I've learned too over the course of running 2 campaigns is, and even I've written books in the past, which also I've tried to write books in the past with not much success. Or novellas. And so as I was kind of building those worlds as well, my approach has changed a bit. So I do start from the inspiration, but then, like you said, I start filling out the world. And I take my time with the world building process because I let my mind kind of wander. I'm not like affixed to like, today I'm going to figure out social structure in this world. I'm like, okay, like you said, start small, right? So you start with like, if these adventures starting in this world, which has like this overarching theme, what are the tangential related things? You think, okay, there's war as a theme, okay, and then you take that concept and you just dig straight down and just go wherever your mind takes you. And that's how I fill up my world. Is like I'm very chaotic with the process, and it helps me personally because I can just start filling out war, okay, clans, kingdoms, okay. Queendoms, whatever, and then we can start looking at architecture, we can start looking at social status, armies, all our stuff, and I just let my mind take me wherever it wants to go, and then sooner or later I realize that there are parts that start piecing together as like a puzzle, and start mapping themselves together once I'm started to go on enough tangents. It's a really chaotic process, but I really enjoy it thoroughly.
Yeah, I think it's good creative advice to never like deny an idea.
Yeah.
So if you want to do one thing, but you're being pulled in another direction, like, you don't want to reject that pull or that idea.
Yeah, totally. I'm actually curious, Shashank, in your modern day setting, like, I know you said you're infusing like these fantastical elements into it, but to what level and what extent are they infusing with the past of the world, and how much is the history of the world intertwined with this mad system that you have going on? Is it like Assassin's Creed type where like the Pope has the apple of Eden or like whatever, or is it like something else?
Well, it's all based around Cold War. So like there's an arms race going on, and so I was planning on maybe having, with the discovery of nuclear power, having that actually be a form of magic. And so you can have suddenly like transmutation bombs or something, and just have these countries that are trying to make weapons in order to not only protect themselves but attack the enemy. Just relearning. It's all in 5th edition, so relearning that sort of magic system.
Cool. So if Einstein didn't create the atomic bomb, who created the atomic bomb? I forget. I think it was Einstein, right?
Yeah,
No. It was Einstein, right?
I'm just not gonna comment.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure it was Einstein who discovered splitting an atom released.
Can someone Google this real quick?
I mean, there's a lot of people, like that's the Manhattan Project, right? Like that had I think Richard Feynman as well. It had a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, I don't think Einstein is like
the one.
I would not. He's not the one I associate. Like, I know there's a guy who is like, there's like famous quotes from him.
Yeah, I remember he was like.
And, yeah.
I remember a thing about Einstein being like, that's the
guy.
worst thing I ever worked on is the atomic bomb, something like that. I forget. The biggest regret of his life was working on the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
Something like that. I remember reading somewhere.
Cool. Let's stop talking about this.
Anyway, but if Einstein never created the atomic bomb in your universe, but instead created the magical nuclear transmutation bomb, does that like ever come up in conversation that like Einstein was the one who like came up with this ridiculous magic bomb?
Well, they're currently at the point where they're first starting to make these bombs. When I say modern day, I mean like 70s, 80s sort of
Mhm.
time frame.
Comparatively.
Yeah.
To...
So
So
like,
are they running into historical figures then?
sorry?
Are they running into historical figures?
Yeah. Of course, it's all in the world. It's not like they're not in the U.S. They're in Cyrus, and people have different names. It's not one-to-one the real world.
Cool.
Yeah, I remember you taking a bunch of names from Games Done and creating your governments.
I'm pretty sure
I'm
all
in there.
3 of you are members of the government.
Oh no.
Was I like? I wanted to be like the chief of bureaucracy, right?
I
think that
believe
was my
that's
request.
the role. Yeah.
I was something really boring. I don't even remember. It's like infrastructure or something like that.
Yeah. Seth
Evan was in charge of digging holes, which is to
that-
say he was in charge of boring.
Boring.
All right. Well, Zoe, you're no longer welcome on this podcast. I'm sorry, I can't allow puns here.
Run.
You can't have me either then.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was a good one.
Great, because Seth is the Secretary of Defense in the world, and he was about to join the campaign too. And I was like, do I change it? Seth can be a player and also the Secretary of Defense.
I mean, I think it's generally good advice to not have character names that could be mixed up. But if your world's big enough, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I always wonder, like, if you're a PC, if you're a player character, and you walk into like a tavern and you meet the bartender who also has the same name as you, does that take away from like I'm special feeling? You know?
Yeah.
That'd be so funny.
Would it be funny, or like it would be funny probably the first time, but then would you be like, I'm not the only one with this name in this world, and now I'm no longer special as a character?
You'd want to talk to your player, but like personally, I would like adore it. Assuming my name had no special meaning to my character, I would adore it if it was just like the common name in the fantasy world, and we were always running into other characters with my name.
Yeah.
Evan, are you thinking?
Without going into spoilers, there is something in my campaign similar to that.
Yep.
There's a few characters, and that has been interesting to see unfold.
It's weird for me, because the party doesn't know what my character's real name is, because my character keeps giving out different names in each town she visits. So
Love that.
it's gonna be a fun time having that conversation.
I had a similar moment in one of the campaigns I'm a part of where we ended up going to a city, the largest city in that world, and at the very entrance they like asked you to identify yourselves within the zone of truth, to find out what everyone's names were and what their intentions are. And I had not revealed my character's actual name at that point, and so when it came out, it was like the big reveal where everyone's like, "What?" And it was like a pretty good moment. That's always exciting. But yeah, I think it's really interesting because like when it comes to world building generally, I often tend to create everything on a very higher level, and then I like to make it up as I go. I'm definitely more improvisational in that sense, where I like to the details of stuff like who's in charge of the law over here, or like what's their name, and like where are they from, and all that other stuff. Some characters are important, and some characters have been established. Some roles and systems have been established, but for a lot of stuff, like, did you know, guys, that Madeline had the world that you two are part of, Evan and Zoe, that you guys had an adventurers guild in the world you never came across?
That sounds right.
That's the downside of fleshing out your world.
Random thing, right? Like it's just like whatever.
Is that different from the Hunters Guild?
Yeah.
Wow.
So random thing that I prepared, random thing I prepared like way in advance, which never ever came up. So then ever since that happened, I'm just like, yo, fuck it, like let's just come up with these things on the spot. And now suddenly, like the
Yeah.
other world that I'm DMing has a merchant's guild that came out of my fucking ass, and it has it also has an adventurers guild that came out of my ass. So
That's when
like
you should have
whatever,
stolen Medlin's Adventures Guild.
it's the same. You don't know.
Reused it. We'll never
Uh,
notice.
we'll never. Yeah, I guess we'll never notice. But like I don't like to inform like these random events in the world to that much of a detail. I like to keep it like relatively scoped outwards so that when we do go into depths with the characters and the players that are playing the game, we can improv it and come up with some crazy ass shit and like have it connect somehow. But that's harder to do in video games. Much harder in video games. Because as a player, you only have so many actions you can perform and so many things you can investigate, and that's all handcrafted for you by level designers and narrative designers. So I'm curious to hear your opinions about like kind of the differences between working with a tabletop RPG world and like actually experiencing video game worlds and creating video game worlds as well, because they're very different ball games, I feel.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I know The Elder Scrolls has a whole giant pool of lore. Now, there's lots of games in The Elder Scrolls, and personally, my 99% of my experience is Skyrim. I imagine The Elder Scrolls Online has a lot more of an opportunity to explore a lot of the world, whereas I know all the other main series games are also limited to one location. And there definitely is lore where it's like, I only know that because I found it on an obscure Wikipedia page. The one I always think of is the fact that the cat people in the game, Khajiits, depending on what stage the moon is at when they're born, they can come out as just like a quadrupedal tiger who's like sentient, but they can just come out as a tiger.
Huh.
That's a thing.
And then, so, yeah, depending on the stage of the moon, how cat-like they are changes. Which is weird because every Khajiit in Skyrim is just a Khajiit, like they're a cat person. They're just on two legs and they all look like the same amount of cat in their face, more or less.
That's whack. I didn't know that. That's kind of wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Learned something
That's
new
definitely
today.
a limitation,
Mhm.
I guess.
It's because like the interaction space in video games is limited, right? Like,
Yeah.
Like in tabletop experiences where you have like an entire imagination's your limit, like
It'd be a lot easier to be like, hey, you're talking to a tiger now.
yeah. It's hard to predict that in a world that's been built for as an experience. But I mean, I think that comes with its pros and cons. The cons is that obviously it's less flexible and that you have to actually define all these different features and spend a lot of time in defining these lore elements and the world elements.
Mhm.
But I'm curious to hear your thoughts about the other differences that you've seen between like interactive spaces that are digital and tabletop.
I could tell you about a really stupid one that I would never recommend to anyone if they want to give exposition for their world. I don't know if you're aware, but Destiny 1 had a companion app, and you would find random cards out while you're exploring the different maps, and you could only view those cards on the companion app on your phone. So it's like half the lore, when the main story was super basic and super, like, not well written, but they had all this super cool lore that you just had to go and find and pull out your phone for whatever reason. Is
It's rough.
the strangest thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But then you have games like Dark Souls that do very similar things where you find lore from items more than the story, but it's actually built into the game and it's properly thought out.
Yeah.
Hollow Knight's another game
Yeah.
where a lot of the story is not. You're not pulled along a really specific path where the story is told to you. You just kind of figure it out as you do stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a wise way of going about it, is instead of having story and then having your interactions, is to like tie that story directly to the ways you're interacting in the game. Maybe that's very smart.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way to really, without outscoping yourself, keeping
Hey,
enough lore.
Kojima would disagree.
Okay.
Oh my god. That was last episode
I don't-
too.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
You.
No, that's
How dare you?
It's a meme now. It's just a meme.
Yeah.
But I think that if you are limited in interaction space and digital space, then I think you just need to make the most of whatever you can. So that it's kind of like the whole like, Chekhov's gun situation where you're like every single book in Skyrim has some lore element behind it and is not totally useless. It's like every single codec entry in the Mass Effect series like has a certain purpose and will explain something to you about the world. It's
I do wish Skyrim had more moments where the stuff in the book was tied to like gameplay elements. There's a lot of times where it's just a story that is like exposition, but there's nothing relevant. And then you find one book where it's like, hit trolls with fire magic. And I'm like, this is a very late stage in the game for me to be reading this in a book, but it's cool. At least it was in there.
Yeah. One thing that I remember really carefully about Ghost of Tsushima, for example, is a game where the story is very like linear and straightforward, and you don't have much choice in the game. And so as you're just moving forward with this entire experience, you're really trying to like find out like where things are and how things are working. And you get told about the history of the Mongol invasion at a very early stage. But the rest of the game is totally like fantasy. There's no actual historical context for the fantasy, except as you move around the world, you can find collectibles called records and Mongol artifacts, which are historically informed as like occurrences that happen in certain parts of Tsushima during that time period. So actually actual historical information, but also like actual artifacts that the Mongols carried with them when they invaded Tsushima. So it's a really cool like historical tie-in which gives you the lore of the actual setting without kind of enforcing a lore that is forced upon you by the story of the world, which is fantastical. And I find it really interesting because it's a really cool way to inform the player of the lore of the world, the actual historical setting that it takes part in, without retracting from the fantastical element of the actual storyline. But I think there are better ways to go about that, but I think that collectibles are like the easiest and the most proven solution to kind of deal with that.
Yeah.
Lore dumping.
I mean, it can be a nice additional reward if you're already a collector kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
It can always be nice to also have that little tip. Like, I think lore, it can be tedious, but if you're into it, it can also be very rewarding. It can be motivating to go find it, seek it out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I feel like that's
totally. I think
part of it for video games is like there are some players who want all the lore. They'll download the companion app. They'll look at the wiki. And then there's some players that are just like, I play Kingdom Hearts because it's got Goofy in it.
Yeah.
Are there Kingdom Hearts players specifically who don't play it for the lore? Because I cannot imagine a Kingdom Hearts fan who will not lecture me for an hour about
There's probably
the
some.
story.
Yeah.
Maybe there's one out there.
Yeah.
I mentioned this earlier. Kingdom Hearts is the worst $100 to spend on a video game franchise ever.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mentioned this last episode where Kingdom Hearts, the bundle from 1 to 3. Sorry, was it 1.5 plus 2.5 Remix HD
Yep.
Up to 3? Was the worst spent $120 on my life. But
Did you just not enjoy them? Or was it like there's too much lore for you to understand?
Man, it's like a Kojima game where the cutscenes are fucking huge.
Mm-hmm.
But also, and you don't feel like you're progressing very far, even though you are. The mechanics are just clunky, so I just never got into it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's hard for me to get into it. Hard to buy into it. Yeah, but that's just kind of how. Yeah, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I had a friend who told me that Kingdom Hearts is pretty accessible for lore. Accessible as a word, as a general word, not in terms of like people with dyslexia. But yeah, someone told me that it wasn't too hard to get into, and I was like, I think you underestimate how much time people have in their lives, or I think you overestimate how much time they have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I I watched a 1.5 hour explainer video because I didn't want to play the games, and I still don't get it.
God, no. You have to really care, I think.
Yeah. It's like you have to go deep diving on the fandom wiki to really understand what the fuck's going on.
No, so you need to play the mobile game that was only released in Japan that's no longer available. You need to play the PSP game as well as the PS4 remake of that game, which was not actually a remake. It was an entirely different game.
Oh, God.
Keep going.
Oh, I blanked for a second because I wasn't sure. I was like, did Shashank want me to cut him off? Am I saving him from having to improvise, or should I have let him? Yeah. It was something I both appreciated but was also intimidated by is the fact that everything in Kingdom Hearts is canon.
Yep.
There were no non-canonical... Literally, there's no non-canonical side games. Like the little gacha games or whatever they are, I'm not super informed, but like they have canon lore.
It is canon that there is a realm where Sora, Goofy, and Donald went on a gummy ship and went through gummy space to travel to different planets. And a different
is this a real thing, or are you just
real?
I'm not improvising. This is Kingdom Hearts 1.
Before, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh dear. You know what's good when
So,
you're talking about your game, it sounds like you're improvising something. Good lord.
Sounds like an improv game.
Yeah.
Sounds like an improv game. Yeah.
Yeah, the writers only did one take. Like they sat down for an afternoon and was like, all right, that looks good. What do you say, like 15 games out of that? Yeah, sounds good. Okay.
One meeting which lasted 48 hours.
Yeah.
I think we've gone off from world building at this point.
I mean, have we though? This is world building. This is canonical that Kingdom Hearts has a world which is made of gummy planets, which is like has a gummy space in it, and that the worlds of Square Enix and Disney coincide, and they're in the same universe, and that is world building.
Have you considered building your world by just mashing it into another world?
Yeah.
Actually, I have.
Into one.
It's very interesting. One thing I did want to talk about when it comes to world building in games, particularly, is that the most important thing to keep in mind when building a video game is your player's interaction with the mechanics of the game. You can't you either have it totally detracted with codex entries into collectibles, or when you build lore into your world, it has to be really intentional. For example, the way Witcher 3 does it, in my experience with open world RPGs, where Witcher 3 really feeds you the lore that's from the books, and that's book informed, novel informed, and it feeds you that because it's relevant to the main plot line, which is very world heavy, because it takes place in a war timeline. So it's really interesting when you kind of weigh those options, and I think the source of the world building can come from many different places, as we discussed. Because it can come from starting from geography, it can come from inspiration, it can come from starting from top down, from very different approaches, from historical contexts. But I think in the end, there's no wrong way to go about it, other than maybe combining Disney and Square Enix. But even then, I don't think that's wrong. It's just different.
Yeah.
So
Obligatory disclaimer that Kingdom Hearts is a perfectly fun and nice game.
Oh, I'm a Kingdom Hearts fan. I've played almost all of them.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That sounded sarcastic. It wasn't. I'm sure Kingdom Hearts is great.
If you say so.
If you say so. I'm sure we have people in GameSync yelling at us right now. Eric and Jordan are
that's
probably
why
yelling
I'm
at us. Yeah,
concerned.
It's fine. They can yell at us all they want. But it's a really fascinating topic to think about world building from various different aspects and where you begin and where you end up. But there's no wrong way to go about it, as long as things make relative logical sense. Any of them don't, they're somehow connected by a thread, which can be
internal logic.
internal logic, exactly. I think that's primarily the most important part, really. But inspiration can come from anywhere, I think, really.
Yep.
And then the more details that you haven't thought about can come up when you're thinking about things from a different lens, from an ant level perspective, if you might. So it was really fascinating.
Yeah.
With video games, however, you do need to be careful about, I think, how much of your internal logic you do reveal, and in how many doses you reveal it in.
Right.
For games, a heavy multiplayer experience, which is like based off of this one particular storyline, maybe you don't need to inform them of all the other political threats going around and all the other issues that are happening. You can hint towards them, but you don't need exposition dumps inside the game, because your player doesn't really care. They want to play the action RPG that you're providing them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to have stuff that's optional. Like, you can stop and read a book in Skyrim about
how lusty an Argonian maid is.
Or that. I was gonna say about how Ulfric, like, terrorized the natives in the Reach or whatever, but, you know, whichever one you prefer. But they're optional anyways.
He's made his choice, Zoe.
When I read Lusty Argonian Maid, I was very taken aback. It was an interesting read. I don't know what I expected.
It's just about baking bread, isn't it? And,
yeah,
like,
it literally is, though.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's for some reason the title is really misleading. Is my point. Yeah. So that was really interesting when I first got into reading books in Skyrim. But now that I'm actually going back and Ghost of Tsushima and going through the records and the Mongol artifacts, I'm fascinated. I'm really into the whole telling me about the history that I'm playing in. That's really cool. You're playing with history. AC Odyssey does a great job of that, where like the environment is really realistic as it was back in ancient Greece, and it's a replication of that. And it does its best to kind of convey the time. Yeah, no, Ubisoft literally has a museum mode, I think, in AC Odyssey now, where you can literally take a tour of Greece as it would have been, because they had actual historians kind of. They said so in a developer interview, and I hope they were not lying.
No, I know. I'm sure it's very well informed. I'm just being funny because, like, you know, it's history. We can't know 100% for sure.
I took a History 191 class in university about video games and history, and a lot of the academic debate about that was like, does history need to be accurate in games? And the general discussion is that if you're a video game, why recreating history where you can play with it? That's the medium. The medium of games is playful, so let's play with history.
Yeah.
That's kind of the academic discourse about the direction that I prefer to argue about when it comes to academic discourse. But yeah, I mean, we are kind of at time, so I wanted to kind of end the podcast episode here and hop right into today's.
Hold on. Can I give one more anecdote about world building?
Go for it.
Real quick.
Go for it.
When I was a teenager, I learned that for the Elder Scrolls, I think online or just for the whole series, there was a position called Lore Master, whose job it was just to know all the lore and like make sure it was consistent. And I was like, I want that job so much. I really like Skyrim.
Yep.
That's it.
No, it's really cool because I recently found out that Danny Carr, one of the people who works on Critical Role set, is now the lore keeper of Critical Role. So that's a job now. Yeah, that's a cool. I'd love to be a lore keeper too. I think it'd be a pretty interesting role to definitely be in. To experiment in at the very least. But yeah, let's hop into games and recommends. What do you all recommend for today? Let's go with Evan first, or Shashank. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm gonna recommend Tabletop Simulator. I recently bought it, and like obviously we can't meet up in person and play board games, or maybe we can when you're listening or watching this, because time is weird.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
Tabletop Simulator is great for just like playing board games with each other again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Get the 4-pack.
That's a very humanitarian suggestion.
I mean, we
like go.
Have you watched any of the episodes before?
Yes.
Yes.
I should.
Yeah. we recommend weird stuff like whiteboards and water.
Sticky notes.
Yeah, sticky notes.
Yep,
So tabletop sim, that's mine.
it's a good one.
Definitely.
Yeah, actually,
No, do we have
Here
a
it
physical?
comes.
You guys want to talk shit about Evan? Just
I'm
kidding.
recommending
Yeah,
an
always
author
back.
this
Sure.
time instead of a book like last time.
Yeah.
Brandon Sanderson.
Oh yes,
He is
Yes.
really interesting when you talk about world building, because all his books, of which he has like 5 different series, all take place in the same universe, just different planets. And all of them
Mhm.
are
Oh,
semi-related, but still very different, and the magic systems are completely different, yet there's still internal logic with them. So if you want world building inspiration, read Sanderson novels. Novels, not novels. Yeah, that's going to be
Yeah.
my recommendation.
Yeah.
They're really good. I use them a lot for inspiration.
Yeah, no, that's great. I have been sloshed with work over the last and just general health issues, so I'm recommending something different today. I'm recommending vanilla rooibos chai.
Ooh.
It's really been getting me through the last 2 weeks, so I would highly recommend checking it out. It's a nice, like, it has Swedish kind of taste, but it has the same spicy chai. The same rooibosy chai kind of over texture that kind of fills up the top and middle of your palate. And when you have it hot, it's like it's really relaxing and comforting, and it reminds me of home. So I would recommend checking out vanilla rooibos chai wherever you find it.
Yeah.
That's my recommendation.
sorry, one more time?
Vanilla rooibos chai.
Vanilla rooibos?
Yeah.
Vanilla rooibos.
Rooibos. Rooibos.
I have
Rooibos.
some chai in my cabinet that I still need to get through.
Chai means tea, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Means tea. Chai tea is tea.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. No. Listen. As a brown guy, let me clarify. Let me clarify. Tea is tea. Tea is the large subset. Tea is like the overlord subset. Like tea is one thing. Is infused water is tea. Below that, chai is a kind of tea, right? Which is full of spices.
Oh.
Yes. And it's made. Well, chai isn't. I think it's a Hindu word. Or a Hindi word. I think. But chai is a particular kind of tea with a bunch of different spices in it, like cloves, like a little bit of cardamom, I believe, crushed cardamom, some cinnamon. So there's a bunch of different things in chai that kind of go into it. Black pepper.
All right.
So chai is a kind of tea.
Chai is a type of tea.
So whenever I see chai tea in Starbucks, I always go.
Yes, in
Maybe?
modern language, chai is a type of tea. But if you're talking about direct translation, chai also is the word for tea. In
Yeah, that's a confusion.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for my recommendations, I've mentioned several pieces of media throughout the episode that I would recommend. However, given the opportunity to pause and pick only one thing, I have to say, go play Skyrim. Go do it. It's so good. Give Todd Howard your money. It's a
Okay.
You can be
All right.
any character you want. Just send him an e-transfer.
Send me an e-transfer. You can
be
buy
lots of different
Skyrim.
characters. You don't have to
Yeah.
be a white guy. You can be lots of things.
Yeah.
There's a big world and there's dragons and different play styles, and it's pretty it's a lot easier to pick up than I think like Oblivion was. So
I mean, are there really
Skyrim.
any other playstyle except stealth archery, rogue? Like, really though?
well,
Well,
you know,
you
there's
can
flavors
buy-
of stealth archery.
apparently now we're Skyrim plugs. You can buy it on PC, Switch. You can buy
Buy it on
PC,
PC
Switch,
twice.
PS4,
Don't
PS3.
forget
You
that.
can buy it
Or
on
Xbox
Xbox.
twice.
You can buy it on Amazon
Oh,
Alexa.
Mm.
You can buy it on your microwave, on
Fridge.
your
Fridge
air
as well.
conditioner, probably your fridge, smart fridge.
Anywheres you've ported Doom, you can probably get Skyrim.
Yep.
Get Skyrim.
Let's go.
All right.
And on that note, thank you for joining us. Shashank, take it away.
We are a fun podcast. We're on. This is episode 9, right?
episode 9, I think.
Ooh,
Yep.
we're nearly at double digits.
Oh dear.
Oh dear, indeed. So if there's anything you think we can do better, let us know. If you think there's something we're doing very well, let us know and we'll keep doing it. As well, if you actually want to be on the podcast and talk about something, we have a sign-up sheet. I'll link it in the description. You can sign up and be on an episode.
Now, is that for any viewers or just members of the Games Den?
Any viewers, anyone who, obviously, we're going to be picking people. It's not like an automatic process. But like, yeah,
You sign up, you're next. It's an order sheet.
yeah, just fill out the sign up sheet. Let us know when you're free, what you want to talk about, and we'd love to have you on the show. Yeah.
The sign-up sheet is actually first in, first out.
Yeah.
Horribly inconvenient, but you
Yeah.
know.
It's just the way it was designed. Nothing we can do about it.
Wow, it's a stack? I didn't know that.
No, wait, sorry. Did I mean first in, last out? I did mean first in, last out. That was the joke. First in, first out actually just makes sense.
Yes.
First in, last out is a stack.
I-
First in, first out is a queue.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
on that note, see you guys next
I
time.
don't know.
Bye-bye.
All right.
See ya.